Thanks very much, Mike. It's my pleasure to be here, ladies and gentlemen, and tell you a bit about Hutt City Council and our journey towards excellence. Just get myself organised with the slide controller. First of all, I'm aware there's a number of people from overseas, so I'll just tell you all very briefly about Hutt, where I come from. There's a map of New Zealand. Hutt City, right down the bottom of the North Island. We're 15 minutes drive away from the capital of Wellington, a small city of 100,000 people only, but by New Zealand standards we are actually there's only 6 councils in the country that are bigger than our own council. Here's a shot, not photoshopped, but I've taken with a wide-angle lens, so it does present a favourable impression of our city, but you will see we are blessed with a fantastic natural environment, a lovely harbour, hills and mountains as a backdrop. If we zoom in a little bit, here's the Hutt River that runs right through our city. It's the source of water supply for the Wellington region, but also presents quite a challenge to our own flood protection engineers. It's the most heavily populated floodplain in the country. Well, without any further ado, let me get on and tell you about our own organisation, Hutt City Council. We've made a huge transition, but it hasn't been quick. So throughout my presentation, I'll be referring to quite a substantial length of time, and that's one of the themes that I'll be talking to you about. So just to recap, the situation we found ourselves in the early 90s through to the mid-1990s. We were the most indebted council on a per capita basis in the country. We had incurred some substantial losses on a property development that did not go that favourably for us. We were incurring regular operating deficits, and we were forecasting fairly substantial increases in rates, which are our local government taxes, and also our borrowing levels. There was a very poor public perception of our council. The media coverage was regularly pointing out our failures. If we jump ahead to now, things have really turned around for us. We have low debt, certainly much lower than the average of our peer councils around the country. A AA credit rating from Standard & Poor's, which was just recently reconfirmed. We're very proud of that. Most years we make operating profits, not every single one. Perhaps the thing of most significance to our community is that we consistently have one of, if not the lowest level of tax increases in the country. And of course, as Mike mentioned, we're very proud of just having achieved the Gold Business Excellence Award, the only local authority in New Zealand to have achieved that. But perhaps the thing that makes the biggest difference to us is seeing the transformation in our residents' views of the council. So we do have a 92% average satisfaction rating across all our services. And bear in mind that some of our services include handing out parking tickets, telling people no, they can't fulfil their dream and build what they might have envisaged on their property. We try to tell them in a nice way. But so some of our services have relatively lower levels than that. Some have relatively higher, such as libraries, which everybody loves. But tonight I'm going to give you some of my thoughts on business excellence, but it's not going to be a technical summary or any in-depth thoughts. It's really just my views as a chief executive. What are those things that I feel have made the difference to us having transformed our organisation over that long period of time? I must just say though first, what we have applied consistently over that time is the Baldridge model. That's been the framework that we have applied, and we've received a lot of advice, support along the way from the New Zealand Business Excellence Foundation, but also advice from other organisations who have implemented positive change in their organisations. We've tried to visit as many as we can and learn from as many of those as we can. But here are my three thoughts. I'm sure they look very cryptic. Hopefully I'll explain them as we go. So my first thought is capture the passion. And I hope I'm not breaching any copyrights by using this slide. I haven't quite checked it out that thoroughly. But that's the all-black front row. Passion and determination are not something that goes hand in hand with local government in our country. In fact, people don't really consider local government to be a place where much passion is exhibited. In fact, quite often we get the opposite. We're the brunt of a lot of media attention, criticism from central government. Sometimes that criticism is justified, sometimes it's, more often it's misinformed, sometimes it's actually deliberately misleading. But regardless of the reasons, we do face that, and that makes it difficult to run an engaged workforce and a successful organisation. Interestingly, I noted this fact recently, the most trusted person in our whole country is the captain of our All Black rugby team. Hence me choosing this slide. Now, I was wondering whether it would still be the case, seeing as we just lost the test against England in the weekend. I think perhaps it still is. Politicians are often at the other end of the scale, unfortunately. But I thought to myself, local government is much more important to the lives of people in our country than our rugby team. When I think about our water engineers, if they make a mistake, thousands of people could be poisoned. If I think about our asset engineers, some mistakes in their planning and contracting puts hundreds of millions of dollars worth of infrastructure investment at risk. And just as recently as last week, I had a small group of our young staff in my office, and they had just saved the life of a young teenager who suffered a major cardiac arrest while playing water polo. And that's not the first time that's happened. So I just pick a few examples like that just to make the point that and local government is important to people in New Zealand, but somehow we have not been able to capture the passion and the desire and the love of our community often. So my thought is, how do we do that? What we've found in Hutt City Council is that people are much more likely to give of their time, to go an extra mile, to make a difference, to improve what they're doing, if they have a passionate connection to the person who is at the receiving end of the service. Like most organisations, a lot of our staff actually aren't the people who deal face to face with the customer. So a lot of our initiatives are designed around trying to get, for example, an IT professional or a finance professional to connect with our customers. And I've just got one example to talk briefly about. That probably won't mean much to people in the room, but if I describe it, it does mean quite a lot to me. The Hutt City actually has a pretty high average income compared with other areas of the country. But we do have areas where people do not have the advantage of a high income. And interestingly, at one of our schools, 26 students were surveyed, and 9 of those students had never, at the age of 16, had never been to the central Wellington CBD, which is only 20 minutes away, because their families could not afford it. So some families do not have the advantages that most of us do. These children in the photo were kids who were not able to reach a level of reading that enabled them to participate in the classroom. And so we have a program whereby our staff volunteer, it's mostly their lunch hours, and they buddy up for about 6 months through a program and help them at the end of it to graduate with some ability to read and actually get some rewards from the education system. So that's an example I mentioned, but we do have quite a lot of programs that we use just to give opportunities to our staff to get out in the community and to make that connection. I'll just rattle a few off. Beach cleanups, graffiti removal, mural painting, household work for the elderly, community vegetable gardens, playground construction, and so on. As I say, all of this is about getting our staff out there into the community and trying to find that passion, that passionate connection with them. I'll just quickly show you our vision, because it is important to us, and this is what sort of gives what we use to try and give a direction to that passion. A better city every day, understanding our community's values, building strong partnerships, and delivering fresh solutions. So what we've found with our staff is this is something the staff at every level can grab hold of, because it's not talking about some grand big project or big step. It's something that every day, every person can make a small difference, which, when taken together, will make a big change. The one thing our staff perhaps are questioning, a lot of it I'm questioning myself, is it would have been a bit better if we talked more about the people in the city rather than the city itself. It's the personal connection that people value the most. I'll go on to my next point. I like this photo because there's something quite mysterious about Yoda, and there's something mysterious about this force that the movie series referred to. But I just latched onto that phrase, use the force, because I think there's something deep in it that can be of help to us all. And I was asking myself, what would have happened if Tiger Woods' dad, when he was a young teenager, had gone up to him and said, Tiger, you're doing fantastic at golf, but your music is useless. We're going to take a few years off, and I want you to practice the guitar. But what if Michael Jackson's dad said to him, look, the band's going great, Mikey, but now, you need to study chemistry more intensively for a few years. Let's take some time off from the Jackson 5 or whatever was happening in those days. I mean, the world would have possibly missed out on some exceptional talents and some great entertainment. So I was thinking about this in the context of ourselves and business excellence, and through all of these programs, frameworks that we look at and give us value, sometimes they cause us to focus a lot on our weaknesses. Sometimes we need to address our weaknesses, but I think the most important thing is to find our strengths, find that genius factor that I think we each have and each of our organisations have, and to focus much more energy on that rather than trying to remedy issues which might be a little bit to the side. So that's what I mean by use the force, to find that hidden force within our organisations and to focus on that. So in the context of Hutt City Council, referring back to my previous point, the force that we have most strongest is with our connection with the community. But we also have developed some successes along the way, which 5 minutes ago, thank you, which we build on. Sometimes at the cost of not rectifying some small weaknesses and improvements we know we could make. And the one I've focused on most strongly is our financial performance, because that's what's really enabled us to turn the organisation around and provide a springboard for further success and investment in our community. I'll step forward a bit, I'll go further off. This is my final point. I like this slide also because if you look at the guy's eyes and look at what's about to happen, he's got a 300-pound defensive tackle about to flatten him, but he's not paying any attention, or seemingly paying no attention to that. He's looking at throwing the touchdown pass. He's looking a long way ahead down the field. And I think that's a useful point for our own businesses. We all do from time to time focus on the strategic plans and so on, but particularly in the context of a local council, it's very important. We're investing in assets which have an average life cycle of about 80 years. A lot of our decisions with city planning and so on actually will change the future of the city for across a generation. So we do need to really focus on that long-term goal. It's very hard when you've got politicians that are elected for only 3 years and their electoral cycle comes around really quickly. So I thought about what it was at the Hutt City Council that enabled us to achieve that. But before I do that, I'll just look up the next slide, because this really emphasises the long-term game that we have been in. The time period on there, if you can't quite see it from the back, is 30 years. So what this slide is showing is that relative to other councils in the country, our taxes on a per capita basis have dropped from being significantly higher than average to now somewhat below, and forecast that we will achieve to fall even further below. So what that means is we've actually, on a per capita basis, reduced our costs already by 25% compared to the other councils in the country. So it's a long-term gain. So getting back to my point, why has that been possible? I believe it's because the community has endorsed our approach. We take a lot of time to consult with them and ask them what they think is important. And in our community, keeping those tax increases to a minimum is something they find very important. To the extent which they've been prepared to defer or delay projects which they place a lot of value on. So the next slide just gives a bit of a summary and highlights that we don't we can't do everything at once, we don't do everything at once, and our community accepts that we don't do everything at once. So you'll see there, in the early 2000s, we focused on some core infrastructure issues, which were a major concern. More recently, we've been able, getting our finances under control, we've been able to turn to some of the more nice-to-have services. I'll just skip ahead and go straight to a summary. I just want to finish by reiterating these 3 points. First point, find the passion, find what it takes to capture the hearts of your staff, your customers and other stakeholders. If you can build on this, people will love your business. And I'm reminded of a saying that I've seen used in our council. You know, the customers probably won't remember everything you say. They're unlikely to even remember everything you did, but what they will remember is how you made them feel when they came to your organisation. My second point was use the force. I believe all of us have an exceptional talent, an area of genius. Try and find that genius that exists within yourself, your businesses, those strengths that set you apart. And I just was referring this to a SWOT analysis. If you find you must do a SWOT analysis and look at your business in that sense, I suggest you spend 90% of your time focusing on your strengths and your opportunities, and then the 10% that's left over, look at the weaknesses and strengths. And finally, go long. Look for the long term, get commitment from your stakeholders, importantly, to your long-term aspirations, and stick to those. When you're thinking about what to measure most strongly those long-term objectives and your progress towards them, and perhaps spend less focus on those short-term objectives. Thank you.